Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Doing really well. Doing really well. Tired from the book launch, but doing well.
I know. It was just in the last few days, right?
Yeah. So, just so much work, but yeah, it's out
In-
there now. So, yeah.
Incredible, incredible, and so needed. Like I was just thinking about today how helpful that would have been because I didn't even know what to expect. I was so sick, so I was just focused on getting better.
Mm-hmm.
So it had never really even occurred to me what I was going to be left with.
Yeah.
And then I went through all of that on my own and could most definitely have used some therapy and counseling during that time because it was a very dark time, uh, especially and different things that I want to get into with you,
Yeah.
like being single. And I had been married for a long time. And then,
Mm-hmm.
having being back, feeling like I wouldn't be able to be accepted by someone because of this new
Oh, yeah.
body.
Yeah.
So, and I get a lot of women who are sick and are postponing explant strictly because of their concern about how they're going to be able to will they be able to accept their own body.
I know. I always say that the social stakes are high, the mental and emotional stakes are high. And, I get into it in the book, but it's not a woman thing or a weak thing or a vanity thing.
Right.
It's a human thing when you grow up in a society like ours, when we learn that these breast mounds are so important. And so all of feeling that way, feeling that apprehension is so it's important for us to acknowledge it,
Right.
because that is a barrier and can lead women. I go into this in the book, but it can lead women to, spend quite a lot of time in this, reasoning through the cause and effects of their implants and their well-being, not necessarily just health, but, even their overall well-being, like compromised hugs or
Right.
always having really cold implants if that's your experience. And so that's
Oh,
why I always say that there's so much more to this than the surgery,
right.
and that's why I wrote the book. It is intended to be a companion every step of the way and for even after you've explanted, because the journey does not end simply because you remove your implants. Not
Right.
at all, So, yeah.
Right. Yes. Yes. All of the things you mentioned, trying not to hug everyone very deeply because those they'll feel those big implants pushing against them.
Yeah, yeah.
And then my implants were always very cold. And I
Hmm.
didn't even realize how much I had missed hugs and being able to feel that heart to heart that I hadn't had in, 17 years because
Yeah,
there was always implants in between that. So
I
that
know.
was a really beautiful thing that I was looking forward to, and I enjoy hugs so much more now.
Me too. I've always been a hugger, and when I had implants, we all have that hug that we learn to do where you roll your
Yep.
shoulders just slightly forward and kind of pull your, and we all do that. But for me and many women, they were also sometimes very painful if it was a really
Mm-hmm.
tight embrace, and
Right.
you happen to have capsular contracture. And so I knew I was eager to get back to good hugs, and I it's probably one of the things I enjoy the most in my post explant life is just these, open, happy, long hugs that are nothing, just not they're totally pain free and just joy filled.
Right. And another thing that I thought maybe it was just me. You don't know until you start discussing with other women, but I would say like 8 out of 10 women that I talk to, their implants are larger than they ever wanted.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I always covered them up. And
Hmm.
almost all of the women I talk to are always trying to dress in a way that they're covering up these things that they
Yes.
thought they were supposed to have.
Right. That's absolutely such a good point. And I talk about that in Busting Free. That's why I like to say that book is written for anyone who got more than she bargained for from breast implants.
Yeah.
And that can be, they were much larger than what you agreed to have placed in your body. And it leads you to a totally different kind of self consciousness. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you were hoping to move away from that experience by getting breast implants.
Yep.
And then you end up with something that you never even bargained for. It wasn't on your radar. And like you, I mean, then it, of course, no one does studies on these kinds of things, so we can
Right.
only share anecdotal information, but it does seem that a very high, you know, percentage of women with breast implants, particularly for augmentation, that they wake up to implants that are much larger than they had agreed to at consult. And, you know, they're told, well, I just knew that you would want them bigger eventually. You know, I'm
Yep.
saving you another surgery.
Yep.
And people outside of this area of women's health, when I'm advocating or raising awareness about this, I can tell that they maybe don't fully believe what I'm saying, or maybe think I'm being hyperbolic, or that I'm confused in some way. But these are factual experiences across the board, you
Yep.
know. It isn't just with implants, it happens with patients who are seeking aesthetic flat closure, and they are left with extra skin just in case they change their mind. So it's this very interesting thing where we aren't given that autonomy over this
Right.
part of our body. You know, it's taken from us at a young age, and then throughout all this whole journey that we go through.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I know I'd love to do polls on that because the numbers would blow them away as far as the amount of women that said this is never what I agreed to, you
Yeah.
know, and wake up with larger implants. But
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to start kind of also back at the beginning, like why I know there's a lot of different reasons that women decide to get implants. And I think like if we kind of understand what led us to that point to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
it's helpful in our journey as we go through explant or decide to go through that, and then accepting our our bodies and ourselves and after. And I'm very I looked a little into some of your resources, and I'm excited to get into the inner fixer because that is most definitely me
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
has been my whole life.
It is
So
all of it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I was excited to bring that new concept forward because it's been long overdue. It's a very helpful way for us to conceptualize, you know, all of this in a way that lets us work with it differently as opposed to kind of automatically following that part of your mind. So we can
Right.
definitely get into that.
Yeah.
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 Do you want to start with that first question about what leads us onto the implant table?
Yes, yes, for sure. Because, you know, for me it wasn't about seeing women with breasts, bigger breasts. I grew up my dad's a commercial photographer, and I grew up looking at photography books where there's a lot of nude women, and all of them have virtually no breasts. That was what was considered beautiful. I was a ballerina for 12 years. So I was surrounded by, you know, no breast is beautiful.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until I started middle school that I was bullied
Oh, yeah.
pretty severely all the way through high school,
Mm-hmm.
where it was just, I'm like, how am I attracting this much attention for not having breasts? It was like everyone's main source of entertainment. So that's what eventually led me back after I breastfed my kids and was flat again. I hadn't dealt with that trauma,
Oh, yeah.
and I thought I had. So, but I know there's so many different reasons that women decide to. But I just love to hear why.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so that kind of gets into the both those two questions is, you know, why does our mind pull us to that? And what about which part of our mind is really a huge fan of it? And so I'll try to be brief. This is possibly my most favorite thing to talk about.
Yes.
So just kind of like give me a signal if I'm
Oh
going too
no,
long.
I think
But
it's extraordinarily important.
yeah,
So
yeah, because as you noted, you were being teased and ridiculed by both by all of your peers,
Yes.
and so that gets to the hard reality is that when we are raised in a society where breasts are valued and sexually objectified, because not all of societies do that, some just they're functional,
Right.
but when we grow up in societies like ours, every single mind begins forming a vast network of beliefs about women and breasts and belonging. Every single mind. It isn't, optional. And it also isn't like we go to some school and they sit us down and they teach us this. It's a kind of
Right.
insidious and automatic process that just happens. And I'll give you an example. So, a couple of background things to keep in mind. The human mind has a little bit of a hobby that it likes to do. So this hobby is once it learns the way that two things relate to each other, it likes to look at that relationship in both directions. So once you learn as a young person, oh, women have breasts, your mind, just because it has that little hobby, it derives the relationship in the other direction and it says breasts are womanly. And
Mm-hmm.
so that becomes like rule number one in what I call the breast rule book. And everybody's minds are forming this book. So as you go through life in a society where they're sexualized and they're objectified, as your mind learns bigger breasts are better, it learns smaller breasts are worse. When
Right.
your mind learns there's an ideal way for breasts to appear, then your mind learns there's a non ideal way, there's a bad way for them to appear. And this just continues on and on. When we start getting exposed to the messaging that breasts make you sexy,
Mm-hmm.
confident, proportioned, balanced, better, your mind starts to feel anxious and apprehensive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and does that mean if I don't look like that, that I'm not sexy, that I
Right.
mustn't be confident, So
Right.
this is going on in the background. Everybody's mind learns this. And then the other thing is, like it or not, we are wired for belonging. That is one of our prime directives. We are wired for belonging. And so, back in the day, people worried about belonging to a group of what, I don't know, 10, 12, 20 people,
Right.
eons ago. Well, now we have these devices that we hold in our hand and we can compare ourselves virtually to the entire world,
Right.
and there's this part of our mind that, like you were talking about being ridiculed, we're going to talk about the inner fixer now. There's a part of your mind that is very aware of the pain of feeling less than.
Mm-hmm.
It's very aware of the pain of feeling like you're not good enough. And it also wants to protect you from group abandonment and group rejection and being judged. And that part of your mind, I call it the inner fixer. And it is very different than an inner critic. An inner
Right.
critic is kind of on your ass for no good reason. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the inner fixer is not here to tear you down, it is here to build you up. It's here to protect you from that pain. So, when you were in middle school and you were being ridiculed, that that was very hurtful. And so, probably at that point, your inner fixer showed up and was like, we've got to do something about this, and that's when we start eyeing the, up to cup bras at Victoria's Secret.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we
Yep.
start thinking, are there little exercises I can do,
Mm-hmm.
or all that stuff starts setting in. We buy into the snake oil of lotions and creams or whatever. We all try different things. So the inner fixer knows all those rules in the breast rule book and really wants to help you narrow your gap between how you measure up to that. And so at some point, for some of us, the inner fixer gets kind of fixated on breast implants. They become it's called appetitive. So they become very appetitive in terms of this is going to give me relief. this
Right.
is going to ease this suffering, that, these feelings that I have. And that's true whether you're getting them to augment or to increase symmetry or to address tuberous breasts,
Mm-hmm.
or if you're reconstructing, because all of our minds hold all of those rules. And so the inner fixer is like, hey, this is the way to go. This is
Mm-hmm.
going to give you that relief. And that's really, what my inner healing program and the book is all about. It's arming women with a completely new set of skills to respond to this very natural part of your mind.
Wow.
Because even when you get your implants taken out, it doesn't get rid of those things at all. Those things persist in your mind. And I don't know about you, but post explant, I work very hard to be accepting of my post explant chest. It's a daily practice for me. It does not match the breast rule book at all. But also, that inner fixer, that part of my mind is always like, you're aging. Have you seen your skin? Those your eyebrows are thinning. Oh my gosh, what about your lips? And so the inner fixer isn't just about breasts. It's
Oh no.
yeah.
Oh no. No,
Yeah.
no, no, no.
Yeah.
It's everything. Like I have a very unhealthy, mental practice that just happens, which is most definitely the inner fixer, where it like goes through every single thing that I can do to fix on my body. And if I do this,
Yes.
and this will fix this and this, and then I'll feel so confident, and then I'll be
Oh
free.
yeah.
Then
Yeah.
I won't worry about this, and I'll be free to do this. And so it, most definitely that resonated so strongly with me, because it's not just my breasts, it's everything. And
Yeah.
I've, you know,
Yeah.
and also being in the industry that I'm in, and then when I see myself, I could, you generally don't even notice your performance or anything else. You're just like, oh, my nose does this and my
Yes.
skin does this. And,
Yes.
it's just like, I just want to like remember that I'm not this body.
Yeah.
I'm so much more. And I know it's
Yes.
not just me. I know there others are struggling with that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And after explant, it was, I wasn't, I remember it was my best friend was with me, and we unwrapped me for the first time. And, it was just 48 hours later. And I was mangled. I still had the drains in. So it was sucking everything
Yeah.
down, like couldn't
like
even
like
see.
you're vacuum sealed against
Yes.
your I could actually see the drains like
Yes.
spiraled under my very thin skin, and
Yes.
I've never seen anything like that in any picture.
No.
And
No.
yeah.
No, there wasn't. And I didn't, even the best, I went to a really wonderful explant surgeon, but there's just not a full, there was no like, hey, warning, this is what this might look like.
Yeah.
And going into it was like, oh, you have plenty of breast tissue and this is going to be fine. And then I had thin capsules, so we had to remove more tissue. And
Mm.
it was just, both of our reactions was we just laughed hysterically out of shock
Yeah.
while crying. Like it was
Yes.
just, it was too shocking for, we've been best friends for 28 years. So been through everything, been there to deliver babies with each other, everything. Um, and we didn't even, I mean, she didn't even know how to respond. And she had had explant 3 weeks before me, but she has plenty of breast tissue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she never had to go through that, explanting to flat, which I had never heard that
Mm-hmm.
term before, but
Mm-hmm.
that is a thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a whole another, it's well, Dr. Rob says it's very similar in many ways to a mastectomy,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because all the tissue was gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you couldn't even see my areolas, like they were sucked in, everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And it is a big thing for the mind to adjust to, you know,
Yes.
and yeah. So, going through those experiences, I always encourage women, I don't mean to be shamelessly plugging the book. I feel passionate about
No.
information in the book
Yes.
that women know what's in it. But
Yes.
in chapter 11 of the book, I go through literally these moments, throughout the entire journey, not just explant. I go through when you love your breast implants and
Yes.
you need to get an MRI. You just know you need to. You're way past due. It could be ruptured and you're scared. How do you deal with that?
Hmm.
Or it's the night before surgery and you're really, really anxious and afraid that maybe you're not going to wake up, or
Right. Oh yeah.
you are wrapped and you can tell that you are literally flat as a board.
Yep.
How can you act on your behalf and take care of your heart and your mind? Because that is so important to helping your nervous system as you're moving through, an experience that feels threatening, and it feels physically risky and
Hmm.
socially threatening, and so being able to, and how do you navigate post-explant intimacy, whether you're partnered or not, although it is two very different experiences, and how do you navigate, some women describe um, just the hell of post explant bra shopping or bathing
Oh
suit
yeah.
shopping. I mean, nothing really, if depending on how you turn out and how much breast tissue you had, things just aren't cut for the post explant breast,
No.
so there's a lot to consider and many ways that you can learn to act on your behalf. There's many ways you can learn to take care of that inner fixer part of your mind. And, my main message to women is that when you learn to do that, any time on this journey, before, during, or long after explant, when you learn to deal with your inner fixer, and I did not hold anything back in that book. I put everything in there. And so when you learn how to do that, you learn how to deal with all of the different rule books. You learn how to deal
Wow.
with everything that's going on in society so that you can age, live, and love on your terms, not society's, and I'm not saying that that stuff isn't gonna, you won't be aware of it and it's still probably going to bother you, but at least you know how to respond to it. And the
Hmm.
decisions that you make are on your terms, and you're not agreeing to things that maybe you can't afford, or maybe you don't understand the risks, or maybe, you don't want to commit to something over and over, whatever that is, whichever body part your inner fixer is fixated on,
Hmm.
so it's a worthy process. And I see inner healing on explant journeys, and I really don't like pie in the sky, like silver lining people, but I sound like it when I say this because these journeys give us this golden opportunity to really reclaim ourselves
Hmm.
from the inside out,
Yeah.
and you get to go back to being that self unaware little girl that you were,
Hmm.
who, that was taken from you in middle school. But,
Yeah.
I think this is really an opportunity to reclaim a sense of safety that comes from within rather than by keeping a vigil and trying to measure up,
Right.
because that is futile. It
Yep.
is, it is, that is a game we're just not going to win, you know?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And so you do in the book you talk about like dealing with a partner, because I have a lot of women that say are very nervous and they say, well, my husband or my boyfriend is a boob guy.
Yeah.
And I hear that a lot, and it's like, but do they care about your well-being? They're sick. A lot of them are sick and struggling, and
Yeah.
but they're so
Yeah.
concerned that their partner is not going to accept them because
I
they're a
know.
boob guy.
Yeah.
And
And it's
so
very real. Their partner abandonment happens.
yeah.
So that is something that is addressed throughout the book. The book starts by helping you understand why we do this. It's
Mhm.
very non-judgmental. It's very validating and normalizing. I absolutely think that that's the only way that we can be with one another when it
Yeah.
comes to decisions that we're making around our breasts. You
Mhm.
know, it's not, I just don't think it's helpful to judge or force agendas on one another. And so chapter 1 opens with just trying to help you understand those inner processes. Chapter 2 introduces the inner fixer. 3 and 4 go through the inner healing. It presents a really cool model that I adapted from one of the most well-studied theories of change. And that model is used by behaviorists like me to develop programs that will literally help people create the change they want in their life. And so
Wow.
you're talking about women who are kind of struggling, you know, as we make these transitions, as we move through this. And so the program that I developed helps you go through that and far beyond. And then the rest of the chapters are skill based chapters. And I wrote them so that you can literally take it off the book and into your life. And it isn't like sitting on a cushion with your eyes closed, although most of them are mindfulness based processes. These
Mhm.
are, all I do is work with women, and I know how it is difficult for us to bring a new practice into our life. And
Yeah.
so all these chapters are written so that you can, most of the things you can do on the go in your life, and you can start integrating these things in your life. So you can do things like, and I promise I'm getting back to the partner thing, but you can, you know, learn to pay attention to yourself in the here and now. Because the inner
Mhm.
fixer is going to be like, hey, remember when you were in middle school, all that really
Mhm.
awful stuff that was said to you? And your inner fixer will also pull you into these feared futures and, like,
Mhm.
you know, make all these predictions. No
Oh
one's ever
yeah.
going to want you know, all that stuff. So, learning how to catch when your mind is doing that and bringing yourself back to the here and now is
Mm.
key. And then it also walks you through this really important inner resource that we all have, but we lose touch with it. And in most um, common settings, it's referred to as the observing self. For
Mhm.
different reasons, I repackaged it as the aware and enduring self, because this part of you doesn't change even if you remove a body part. It endures. And it also sees the breast rule book and sees the inner fixer, but it's different than those. And so it helps you be aware of those things, and it helps you see, like you said earlier, that there's more to you than your body, you know. And man, that is so important for women to really tangibly experience.
Mhm.
So it gives you that, and then it also helps you learn. This is so important too. How do you actually take that breast rule book, which is basically kind of like shoved up in front of your face all the time
Right.
you're going through life? You know, how do you take that breast rule book and lower it? You know, how do you do that? And so it teaches you
Yeah.
how to do that, and then it also helps you practice acceptance, like genuine acceptance of how you're feeling and thinking and how you appear. And I'm proud of that chapter, because a lot of therapists will say, you just need to learn how to accept yourself. And then they don't really tell you how.
Right.
And so I'm really proud of that book. I mean, that chapter. And then it also walks you through how to connect with your heartfelt values, not your socially conditioned ones, and helps you learn how to do what matters. And so, to get back to the partner thing, if you learn those skills, if you learn how to do that, and you are partnered with somebody who really, really is going to grieve the loss of your breast implants, you can open up to how that leads you to feel. You can use that present moment awareness to communicate with your partner, be real. You can use values to guide you, like honesty, bravery, you know, whatever that is, assertiveness, self advocacy. You can choose what you want to be guided by in these difficult conversations with this partner. and you can act on your behalf. And if your partner, if you show up as the woman you want to be in a values guided way, and your partner is just not there for it, especially if you're ill, then you use all the skills again to companion yourself through that additional loss,
Yeah.
you know? And that's so, and like I said, it's peppered throughout the book, that example of working with these partners, but that's how it helps. Like it's, these are so nuanced, these journeys, so I
Yeah.
wanted to give women like this skill set that they could flexibly use depending on what is going on in their life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. Um, one thing that was interesting to me, and I've heard a lot of women have DM'd me, is after explant, um, especially if you've explanted to flat, you have, I went through a period, and a lot of women go through a period of being obsessed with natural breasts, and like you just find yourself staring at other people's breasts and being like, how is that possible? How can someone have breasts that look like that? How come someone could grow those and they didn't grow on me? And going through and
Yeah.
being like, do they even understand? And so it's so interesting, because I was like, I had a lot of women DMing me that, and I went, oh yeah, I went through that for a good 9 months of just like finding myself looking at everyone's breasts and being like, those are real breasts. And then of course you see the before and after, before breasts, before they get implants, and you're like, no, your breasts are perfect, I would do anything to have your breasts.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just that, it's just interesting because there's just so many like interesting stages of grief and loss that you go through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then that there hasn't been a, a book or a therapist or anyone that knows how to guide you through that. So I was so incredibly happy to find you and to know you were writing a book, because I'm doing my best to try to support women all through the process.
Mm-hmm.
But there wasn't very much support for women with breast implants who can't explant right now, or are frightened to explant, or there just wasn't. And
Yeah.
so I tried to help them with protocols for nutrition and different supplements and you know mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really excited to be able to share your book with them, because I wish I had it during
Yeah.
that process. I will
Yeah.
I will be reading it now, because I am still healing
Oh
and
yeah.
dealing with that, and
Yeah.
considering dating in the future and different things like that, and having to be okay with all of that for
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
And I'm scheduled to go back next week for fat transfer, but it's not it's not like I'm gonna just have, okay, everything's perfect now. We're just trying to fix some major issues that occurred from my last debacle, and so
Mm-hmm.
probably would have been best just to leave it be. But
That's what
my
I've opted for, much to my inner fixer's great chagrin.
yes,
And so I don't judge anyone for any decision that they're making, because, the bottom line is that this is really hard, complex stuff. I mean, I wrote a
right,
book about it. And,
right,
it, depending on what we bring in, what history we bring in, how supported we are, depending on what breasts mean to us, and a number of other things,
yeah,
each of us are going to make the best decision that we can for ourselves at this time,
yeah,
and, for me, my anxiety over surgery is just so high. Yeah. So I'm just like, this is it. This is how it is. And I just use these skills to kind of help navigate it. So it's a
Yeah.
lot, but it's worthy. Yeah. And women who are, there's the women who are pre-explant. They're having problems. They got more than they bargained for, you know, irrespective of BII, they just might have these lifestyle impacts. But, when you're pre-explant and you're considering it and you're, kind of going back and forth or maybe struggling with it, that is a hard time. And then
Mhm.
there's that whole other layer of you can't afford it, you
Mhm.
know, and both of those trajectories also really, like you were saying, there isn't recognition of or support for it. And it that you can do things. It isn't all or nothing. You can start reclaiming your heart and mind at any point.
Mhm.
You don't have to have a consult. You don't have to have a surgery scheduled. You can be
Mhm.
doing things years before you're ready
Yeah.
to explant
Yeah.
or before you can afford to explant. You can be doing things to act on your behalf and liberate yourself
Oh yeah.
from all of that, and that's not just um, lofty speak. It is literally possible. There's ways for you to kind of catch that thinking, open up to that feeling, and still do what you want to do and still be safe and take care of yourself,
Yes.
schedule those MRIs, get those
Right.
things done. Work with people like what you were saying that you were offering, helping people to do things that can mitigate any kind of physical struggling that they're having, that their body's having,
Right.
even if they're not ready or can't explant yet. That's really important. So I also really advocate that women do work on inner healing, and it looks different on either side of explant, and that is in that model that I was talking about. But by working on it before you go into surgery,
Mhm.
by doing a lot of work ahead of time, that is going to be soothing to that
Yeah.
distressed part of your nervous system,
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Oh
which
yeah.
is so important if you're going to go into a major surgery, a difficult recovery, to soothe yourself, to soothe your nervous system in very real ways.
Yes.
We know that there's ways to use the mind body connection to, activate the parasympathetic nervous system and
Right.
soothe yourself. And so, why not learn how to do that and kind of go into the surgery like a rock star with all those skills? I love when
Oh
women
yeah.
reach out to me and they say, um, I did it. I did what we worked on. And one woman told me that some of the people in the room with her asked, like, what are you doing? How are you? You're so calm, And
Um,
she was like, just using one of those skills, and just
yeah.
kept bringing herself, lowering her baseline and staying calm. So, and I had to do that too. I don't know about you, but before my surgery, I was just completely alone. They wouldn't let anyone back there with me.
Yeah.
And my doctor was like 90 minutes late for my surgery. So I was just sitting in my bed alone, with my mind. So it's really important to know how to take care of yourself.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. My surgery was about an hour late
Mm-hmm.
because of the previous case, and your mind can really run off with you.
Yeah.
So that would be extremely helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And something else that I struggled with, and I know I've had other women contact me that struggled with, where you're afraid to uh, express just the entire disappointment and upset and everything that goes with this, because we feel like we did it to ourselves.
Oh,
You know, the
yes.
I
Yeah.
did this to me, so I can't. I feel like anyone that's going to see me going through this is going to be like, well, you did that to yourself. So
Oh,
it's this shame
Oh, I know.
of look what I did to my body.
I I know. I really have a strong reaction to that. And
Yeah.
excuse me, but I'm going to swear again on your live.
Yes.
I just call bullshit on that
Yeah.
because none of us go into this. Nobody signs up and says, hey, I want to get breast implants and I hope I get a lot more than I bargained for from them.
Mhm.
And I hope that maybe they're larger than I want them to be, or they're cold, or there's things about them that I never even knew was possible.
Right.
And maybe my body's going to have a really strong reaction to them. Like, no one signs up for breast implants hoping to be disappointed or expecting to be disappointed or harmed.
Yeah.
No one. Everyone goes into it. All you have to do is go on Google and type in, should I get breast implants? And you will have pages and pages where you are flooded with marketing that tells you, yes, you absolutely should. And they are amazing promises of
Yeah.
how your life is going to be.
Yeah.
And so, irrespective of that predatory marketing, none of us did this to ourselves. It doesn't matter if you elected for it for augmentation or you chose it as a reconstruction option. None of us do this to ourselves.
Right.
It is an insidious thing that's put into our minds when we're very, very young without our permission or our awareness.
Yeah.
And most of us, you know, women get breast implants for all different reasons. They found their partner with somebody else and their mind convinced them that, it had something to do with her breasts or her breasts,
Yep.
there's so many different reasons. And so, no, we do not do this to ourselves, irrespective of if it's an elective surgery. And it's so unhelpful. So, irrespective of all that, when your mind does that to you, if anyone's listening to this later, if your mind does that to you, I did this to myself, I can't complain, I got what I deserved,
Yeah.
I knew the risks, or whatever your mind does, please notice that thinking, just acknowledge that thinking is with you, and then pivot to some kind of self compassionate stance and genuinely validate that there are a lot of complex things that lead us on to the implant table, and a lot of complex things that can happen once they're in our body. And
Yeah.
that recovery is an involved thing. And to just notice that thinking and acknowledge it, but you don't have to follow it. You do
Yeah.
not have to follow your thoughts. And so those thoughts can be there telling you not to reach out, not to honor your full experience,
Yeah.
and you don't have to follow them. You can still be the woman that you want to be. You can still be self-loving, you can still be self-compassionate, and it's okay. I think it's actually really important for all of us to openly talk about our experiences. Like you were talking about when you unwrapped and you were like vacuum sealed. It's really important that we are able to talk about our full experiences with this, not
Yeah.
to scare anyone, but to prepare them.
Right. Right, because
Yeah.
I didn't know what to expect, and it wasn't something that I could find that was discussed. And one thing that I do talk to women about, and I've tried really to be really careful with the way that I talk about breast implants and uh, the issues that you can have from them on my page, is because when I first found out it was my breast implants and I went on to these different boards and forums, and I just saw over and over just skull and crossbones and toxic soup and all the chemicals and everything. So while that's important data and information to have, I don't think you should dwell in that, because that
Mm-hmm.
makes people fearful. If you can't, like,
Mm-hmm.
you go, oh great, I need to get them out today, and
Yeah.
then that just puts you in this state of fear, which is the opposite of what you need for healing. And I
Yes.
believe that healing can start the moment you decide, even if it's years before you can get an
Totally
explant, like
agree.
you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really try to be aware of that verbiage and encourage women to not continually look at that stuff, because it's not helpful.
I've noticed how carefully you choose your words, as do I. And
Yes.
I noticed that you and I both take some time and kind of think through what we're saying. And I know what your mind is doing because mine's doing it too. It's like, it's a lot to speak about.
Right.
And it's very important to do it in a way that is supportive. And to your point, and I'm glad that you brought it up, it is so important, when we come to a place of learning about, the way that the body can react to breast implants or all of that stuff. It's so important that the next part of your journey is done thoughtfully.
Yes.
Because when you do, you remember when you said they feel like I've got to get them out today.
Right.
When we rush through the preparing part, I call it the readying part in my model.
Right.
When you rush through the readying part, and if you only focus on, 5 important things, about the surgery, if that's where your mind is and you're rushing through it,
Mm-hmm.
there's a good chance later on you're going to be on the phone with me, you know, which happens, which
Oh yeah.
is calling me up and saying, I, I rushed, I didn't consider it all, that even this hasn't turned out like I thought that it would. It's so
Mm-hmm.
much more involved or whatever. And, fearing that you've made a mistake,
Right.
right? And these are expensive and, you know, body altering surgeries that we're
Yeah.
doing
Oh
and
yeah.
mind altering. And
Yeah.
so we know from that change theory that I was telling you about, we know from change theory that when you're getting ready to make a change like this, that if you don't fully prepare yourself, which is why I talk about holistic explant planning, if you
Right.
don't fully prepare yourself, then your chances of relapsing are increased. And relapsing on this is defined very differently for different women,
Right.
but some women don't want to have additional surgeries or they don't want to go back to having breast implants, but because they didn't get fully prepared, their inner fixer is like, look,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we need to do this again,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
it's a difficult thing, and
Yeah.
you're wise, and it is helpful to kind of encourage women to know that stuff 100%. And I also say, please zoom out and be sure to let me talk about the guided audios just for anyone
Yeah.
listening, just so they know. So I always encourage women to be sure to zoom out and look at the full impact on their life
Yeah.
from their breast implants. And again, it's not to convince women to do anything. It's just, if you put your flag in the ground and you say, my explant is all about this,
Right.
you know, it's not as powerful of a position as someone who says, my explant is about this, and it's also about this and this and this and this, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so for me, my explant was partly about improving breast cancer screening. My explant was also about, I didn't want to feel fraudulent in my work as a self acceptance specialist.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting behind 2 breast implants that I didn't want, but
Yeah.
I was afraid to remove. I was
Yeah.
just afraid of that surgery,
Yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
explant for me was, about improving those hugs that we talked about. It was about, so much more than this one thing, that way, no matter what happens, you've been true to all of you, you
Yeah.
know? So the thing I
Yeah.
wanted to mention about the guided audios is part of the Busting Free book. I ended up recording several, like 30 guided audios for
Oh
women.
wow.
And I made 4 like worksheets that you can fill out. And there's a couple of demo videos. The guided audios are really important. So as you're going through the book, there's little icons and it'll say, listen to guided audio 6.1. And
Okay.
then the reader can just go to the front of the book, scan the QR code, and she goes into this huge digital library. And then she can just listen to a guided audio. Some people like to read, some
Mm-hmm.
people like to be guided. So
Yeah.
it gives them both options. And you can listen to the guided audio, when you're in bed at night and you don't feel like reading, or if you're at a pool or a beach and less than thinking comes up, you can go
Mm.
to the digital library and you can listen to the one about your inner fixer.
Yeah.
There's a whole series of that literally teaches women how to practice present moment awareness,
Mm.
on the go. There's a whole series that brings you back in touch with that inner resource that I said that we all have, that we lose touch with, the aware and enduring self.
Yes.
And I would love for women to do those exercises because it really does, help you reconnect with this part of you that just empowers you to navigate this differently. But more importantly, it lets you see yourself from a different perspective, and it opens up for self compassion. And so many women that I work with, after you've spent decades struggling with your inner fixer, so many women that I work with say, I, after we do that exercise, they say, I don't think I've ever felt self compassion before. I didn't know what that was,
Oh
you
yeah.
know? And so I just made all that open source. It's freely, I just share it freely,
That's
because
wonderful.
I would rather women have those access to those things than hide them away on my website somewhere. So I
Right.
do want people to know, just go to my website. It's amandasavagebrown.com. And then there's a whole like landing page for busting free. And
Okay.
the whole digital library is just there for the taking. So
Oh,
it is
wonderful.
better if you use the book.
Right.
But they're all there for anyone who wants them.
Wonderful. And then so you're available for virtual consults or phone
Yeah.
consults for
Yeah.
anyone that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. There's a big difference between doing therapy and coaching, and what is true for most women on these journeys. A lot of women already have therapists,
Right.
and so what we do is we work through this inner healing program, and I teach you, given your history, your sensitivities, your strengths, your context, how to use those skills,
Mm.
either, as you're facing explant or if you're recovering from it. And so I help women through that. Um, you know, therapists have to work for therapy within the states where they're licensed, and
Mm-hmm.
that hopefully is going to be changing in 2023. So that's part of why I wanted to offer the coaching program, the inner
Right.
healing program. But it's, the book is really a great starting point.
Yeah. Oh
It
yeah.
really is. So, and that's why I wanted to write the book, is I felt that I could reach and help so many more people through the book.
Yep.
Um, and I'm likely going to be start offering groups as well. So online groups, workshops, and courses that women can take. So, for example, a lot of women have really disturbing images that bother them. So either they've seen an image of a woman that they don't want to turn out like, or
Mm.
they have a painful memory from their earlier life, or, something that is just really kind of their mind keeps offering up. There's a way that you can learn to kind of step back from images, distressing images that
Right.
really get in your way. Like we've talked about, some women are, you know, they get this image of partner abandonment and what that
Right.
means to them. So, I might be offering things soon, just deep dives into different skills as you're moving through this. And that
Oh,
way
that'd
women
be
can choose what they want and what they need. So,
yeah, that sounds amazing. And I know that I know it's just so incredibly important before, but also after. And I remember crying I went in for adhesion release with my explant surgeon because we kept trying to this tissue was just healing to my chest wall, and it's so incredibly painful. And I would endure any amount of pain to try to fix any of this. And I was just crying and saying I was going to date again. And he was
Oh,
like, "You can still date." He was like, if someone just only cares about your breasts, they're not the right person for you. And
yeah,
but it was me that only cared about my breasts, then,
yeah,
and putting that assumption that that would be the only thing someone else cared about.
yeah,
So I just know how important it would have been for me, and still will be, and for others who are
yeah,
post explant and still in that time where you're just,
yeah.
it's difficult to navigate on your own, because generally the thing that led us there we haven't healed from to begin with. So
Right. Because, you know, breast implants don't give us self acceptance.
right,
They don't.
right, no,
We might be very happy with them. We might love the way we look or not, you know, whatever. Our experience with them is what it is. But they don't teach us self acceptance. They don't
no,
teach us how to be with that feeling of I'm not good enough or I'm
yeah,
less than. And
yeah,
again, this isn't a woman thing, and this isn't a woman with breast implants thing. This is just a
no,
human thing,
yeah,
you know? And so I love that you just shared that story about, you know, that moment with your surgeon and talking about that, because those things are happening. I mean, can you even imagine like how many women right now on the planet are having that experience right
yeah,
now as we're talking?
yeah,
And those are the things that are deeply felt and rather overlooked,
yeah,
you know? And that's why when I went through explant and saw all of this going on, I just thought, I really want to help with that, those moments,
yeah,
because though they're brief, they can be quite searing into our being, you know, and we are very sensitive to painful experiences, and we can start, like, our life can become about avoiding them, you know,
right,
and that's what I don't want to have happen to, you know, it's just an increasing cohort of women who are explanting, and I want our lives to be full and open and expansive and not constricting and filled with avoidance. You know, if you
right,
like going to the beach, go to the freaking beach. And
yeah,
even if your mind is judging you or fearing something, you don't have to white knuckle your way through it. You can take
right,
yourself skillfully and lovingly, you know, and same for you as you're moving forward, you know,
yeah,
we can just do this in ways that are very loving, which most of us need after decades of these other
oh yeah,
experiences.
oh yeah, we absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that I do say, like I don't regret what I've been through, because I've had to do so much inner work and healing and learning to love myself, which, is a big thing, especially depending on how you were brought up. That can sound selfish, but
Yeah,
you can't love others if you don't know how to love yourself. So
exactly.
it's been a really incredible journey that has been very hard, but I don't regret,
Yeah.
and I'm continuing to learn. And I want other women to know that there is hope and there is healing and joy on the other side, and all through the process there can be. So
Yeah.
I'm so excited to get your book and to share it with others, and all of your resources. I think it's about to cut us off. Oh no. But this has just been incredible, and I will share your information so others can reach out to you.